Chapter 29. Now the Philistines had gathered all their forces at Aphek, and the Israelites were encamped by the spring that was in Jezreel. As the lords of the Philistines were passing on by hundreds and by thousands, and David and his men were passing on in the rear with Achish, the commanders of the Philistines said, "What are these Hebrews doing here?" And Achish said to the commanders of the Philistines, "Is this not David, the servant of Saul, king of Israel, who has been with me now for days and years? And since he deserted to me, I have found no fault in him to this day." But the commanders of the Philistines were angry with him, and the commanders of the Philistines said to him, "Send the man back that he may return to the place to which you have assigned him. He shall not go down with us to battle, lest in the battle he become an adversary to us. For how could this fellow reconcile himself to his Lord? Would it not be with the heads of the men here? Is not this David of whom they sing to one another in dances? Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Then Achish called David and said to him, "As the Lord lives, you have been honest, and to me it seems right that you should march out and in with me in the campaign. For I have found nothing wrong in you from the day of your coming to me to this day. Nevertheless, the lords do not approve of you. So go back now and go peaceably, that you may not displease the lords of the Philistines." And David said to Achish, "But what have I done? What have you found in your servant from the day I entered your service until now, that I may not go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king?" And Achish answered David and said, "I know that you are as blameless in my sight as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the commanders of the Philistines have said, 'He shall not go up with us to the battle.' Now then, rise early in the morning with the servants of your lord who came with you, and start early in the morning and depart as soon as you have light." So David set out with his men early in the morning to return to the land of the Philistines, but the Philistines went up to Jezreel. Chapter 30. Now when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day, the Amalekites had made a raid against the Negeb and against Ziklag. They had overcome Ziklag and burned it with fire, and taken captive the women and all who were in it, both small and great. They killed no one, but carried them off and went their way. And when David and his men came to the city, they found it burned with fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him raised their voices and wept until they had no more strength to weep. David's 2 wives also had been taken captive, Ahinoam of Jezreel, and Abigail the wife of Nabal of Carmel. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because all the people were bitter in soul, each for his sons and daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. And David said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, "Bring me the ephod." So Abiathar brought the ephod to David. And David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I pursue after this band? Shall I overtake them?" He answered him, "Pursue, for you shall surely overtake, and shall surely rescue." So David set out and the 600 men who were with him, and they came to the brook Bezor, where those who were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men. 200 stayed behind, who were too exhausted to cross the brook Bezor. They found an Egyptian in the open country and brought him to David. And they gave him bread, and he ate. They gave him water to drink, and they gave him a piece of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit revived, for he had not eaten bread or drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. And David said to him, "To whom do you belong, and where are you from?" He said, "I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite. And my master left me behind because I fell sick 3 days ago. We had made a raid against the Negeb of the Kerethites and against that which belongs to Judah, and against the Negeb of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire." And David said to him, "Will you take me down to this band?" And he said, "Swear to me by God that you will not kill me or deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this band." And when he had taken him down, behold, they were spread abroad over all the land, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. And David struck them down from twilight until the evening of the next day, and not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men, who mounted camels and fled. David recovered all that the Amalekites had taken, and David rescued his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, whether small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything that had been taken. David brought back all. David also captured all the flocks and herds, and the people drove the livestock before him, and said, "This is David's spoil." Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow David, and who had been left at the brook Besor. And they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. And when David came near to the people, he greeted them. Then all the wicked and worthless fellows among the men who had gone with David said, "Because they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered, except that each man may lead away his wife and children and depart." But David said, "You shall not do so, my brothers. With what the Lord has given us, he has preserved us and given into our hand the band that came against us. Who would listen to you in this matter? For as his share is who goes down into the battle, so shall his share be who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike." And he made it a statute and a rule for Israel from that day forward to this day. When David came to Ziklag, he sent part of the spoil to his friends, the elders of Judah, saying, "Here is a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of the Lord." It was for those in Bethel, in Ramoth of the Negeb, in Jatir, in Aurora, in Siphmoth, in Eshtemoa, in Rachel, in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, in the cities of the Kenites, in Hormah, in Boration, in Aphek, in Hebron, for all the places where David and his men had roamed. Chapter 10. For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. Nevertheless, with most of them God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters as some of them were. As it is written, "The people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play." We must not indulge in sexual immorality as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages has come. Therefore let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak as to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I say. The cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a participation in the blood of Christ? The bread that we break, is it not a participation in the body of Christ? Because there is one bread, we who are many are one body, for we all partake of the one bread. Consider the people of Israel. Are not those who eat the sacrifices participants in the altar? What do I imply then? That food offered to idols is anything, or that an idol is anything? No, I imply that what pagans sacrifice they offer to demons and not to God. I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. Shall we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, But not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any question on the ground of conscience. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. If one of the unbelievers invites you to dinner and you are disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any question on the ground of conscience. But if someone says to you, "This has been offered in sacrifice," then do not eat it, for the sake of the one who informed you, and for the sake of conscience. I do not mean your conscience, but his. For why should my liberty be determined by someone else's conscience? If I partake with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that for which I give thanks? So, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Chapter 8. In the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day of the month, as I sat in my house with the elders of Judah sitting before me, the hand of the Lord God fell upon me there. Then I looked, and behold, a form that had the appearance of a man. Below what appeared to be his waist was fire, and above his waist was something like the appearance of brightness, like gleaming metal. He put out the form of a hand and took me by a lock of my head, and the Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven, and brought me in visions of God to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the gateway of the inner court that faces north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provokes to jealousy. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel was there, like the vision that I saw in the valley. Then he said to me, "Son of man, lift up your eyes now toward the north." So I lifted up my eyes toward the north, and behold, north of the altar gate, in the entrance, was this image of jealousy. And he said to me, "Son of man, do you see what they are doing, the great abominations that the house of Israel are committing here, to drive me far from my sanctuary? But you will see still greater abominations." And he brought me to the entrance of the court, and when I looked, behold, there was a hole in the wall. Then he said to me, "Son of man, dig in the wall." So I dug in the wall, and behold, there was an entrance. And he said to me, "Go in and see the vile abominations that they are committing here." So I went in and saw, and there engraved on the wall all around was every form of creeping things and loathsome beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel. And before them stood 70 men of the elders of the house of Israel, with Jaazaniah the son of Shaphan standing among them. Each had his censer in his hand, and the smoke of the cloud of incense went up. Then he said to me, "Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the dark, each in his room of pictures? For they say, 'The Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land.'" He said also to me, "You will see still greater abominations that they commit." Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of the Lord, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Then he said to me, "Have you seen this, O son of man? You will see still greater abominations than these." And he brought me into the inner court of the house of the Lord, and behold, at the entrance of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs to the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, worshiping the sun toward the east. Then he said to me, "Have you seen this, O son of man? Is it too light a thing for the house of Judah to commit the abominations that they commit here, that they should fill the land with violence, and provoke me still further to anger? Behold, they put the branch to their nose. Therefore I will act in wrath. My eye will not spare, nor will I have pity. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, I will not hear them." Chapter 9. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "It was not that this man sinned, or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." Having said these things, he spit on the ground and made mud with the saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back, seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is he." Others said, "No, but he is like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." So they said to him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. So the Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him, since he has opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight, until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But how he now sees, we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he will speak for himself." His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." So for the second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" And they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Why, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us?" And they cast him out. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." He said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, "Are we also blind?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say, 'We see,' your guilt remains."
The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Father, your word is invigorating, uh, joy-inducing, wisdom broadening. Father, I feel life when I pay attention to this guy read and look at the words and process the meaning and the information that you have preserved for us. Father, thank you for feeding us, for feeding me, feeding my soul, my spirit, my life. I'm so grateful to have it here before me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Hello, everyone. Mom, you're here. Love you. Love you all. And Chris, if you're still in here, I saw you say hi, Michael, way up front. I saw that. I know you guys are all saying that to me, but it stood out to me. I saw you said, good morning, Michael. There it is. You said, hi, Michael. Wanted to acknowledge you. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I'm acknowledging all of you. That stood out. Okay. Updates? Don't I give any updates? I mean, it was such a busy week last week. Oh, Mom, this is a loaded statement. By the grace of God. Maybe I'll have to call you later. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Busy week with the Armenian Film Festival. Even in my journal last night, I wrote, I'd love to go into detail about every night of the Armenian Film Festival, but time does not permit. Look, I could break down each film, each interaction, the famous people that I know that came up to say hi to me, and the famous people that I saw that I was avoiding. And then the average Armenians that I met and that are now friends. And right, it's just this networking. I met a lawyer, an entertainment lawyer. I met a reporter that I'd already heard about and did a little research on her and was introduced to her by a music producer. And I saw her jaw literally drop probably 3 times as I was articulating what I'm doing. This is a reporter. I saw her eyes go wide and her jaw go, and her look at the music producer going, like, this guy's really doing this? And this is a very all right, I'm not going to go into more detail because I know this channel is monitored by my hater. All right. So let's get into the Word of God. 1 Samuel 29, and I do say this over and over again, but this 1st and 2nd Samuel are just some of the best. You know, if I'm going to do a mega series like The Chosen, I mean, that's what I'm planning with Solomon's story. But if I'm going to do a biblical one, it's right here. It starts right here. Might even start in this chapter. Is it this chapter? No, it's in the next chapter, but in today's reading, this I'll get to that, what I'm talking about. So here we have David has been hiding from Saul and among the Philistines. Good place to hide. I mean, dangerous place to hide, but good place to hide if you know, the mortal enemies of each other. And so he's been hiding among them. And there's this king of the Philistines, Achish, who's been serving. And they're like, we're gonna go to battle now. Yeah, Chloe. The mega series on David, this era, right? This period, David's kingdom, essentially. I don't want David would not be the main character. He would be a significant character, but we'll get to that. But so here they're all going off to war, and Achish is like, "Oh, I got a good warrior." So you guys have heard of David's mighty men. We think he was the king when he became king over Israel. Here he's hiding out, and he's about to become king over all of Israel. But he would gather around the most fierce warriors, and that wasn't just Israelite warriors. He had an Ammonite, he had a Hittite, he had some other foreigners who were the baddest of the bad at killing with swords and spears, and they were his mighty men. Well, it wasn't exclusive to him. Here, David is a mighty man to a Philistine. That's what's happening here. David is a warrior, and he's going out to war with his Philistine boss or king. Right? He's serving a lord, and so Achish is like, I got a mighty man on my side. I'm going to take him with us to battle. And the other Philistines are like, no, 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 don't bring your mighty man, because we're going to go kill his people. How do you know he's not going to turn on us, right? So this is from the Lord for a couple of reasons. Obviously, it's the Lord sparing David from going to have to kill some of his own people, like to obey his Lord. Would he have turned the sword on his own people? So that it spares David from that conundrum. But it also is God turning David back toward his family, because his family's being sacked by the Amalekites. Right? He's with the Philistines going to attack the Israelites. The other Philistines say, no, send David back. David goes back, and in the next chapter finds that his whole camp and all their people have been sacked by the Amalekites. So this is God saying, David, you got to go. Don't go fight your own people. Go rescue your people. Right? This is God's providential guidance for David. This is amazing in this story. And here's another, and then there's a hero, and this is where like the whole. Probably, I was literally envisioning this yesterday as I was listening. Sometimes I pre-listen to the Bible every morning. So last night, as I was listening to this, it's in verse 11 of chapter 30. They found an Egyptian in the open country. So imagine, lights up, a series, episode 1, scene 1, out in the desert. This Egyptian describes he was with the raiding party. He was a slave of one of the Amalekites, and he had fell ill, and his master left him to die in the desert, and he hadn't eaten or drank water for 3 days. So that's, camera up, emaciated Egyptian languishing in the desert, and David's men discover him, like the salvation, like he's dying, his eyes are gonna fade, and then he sees these guys marching toward him over the horizon, and he doesn't know if he's about to die. Somebody's gonna, and they bring him, and they rescue him, and they feed him, and they say, hey, can you show us where these raiders are? They have our families. So this is God's provision. God struck this Egyptian with sickness so that he would be abandoned in the desert and almost die after 3 days. That was God doing it to the Egyptian so that he could be rescued by God's people. Right? That's God at work in all these circumstances. All right. So that would be a perfect introduction to David's men, and the hero would be among them, the guy that's the main character for the series. I already have him in mind. I've already written part of a script for this. I'm telling you, it's not just an idea. It's something I actually want to do eventually, Lord willing. Okay. Corinthians 30. Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 30. I'm just going to say this real quick. So this is about food sacrificed to idols, sort of. I mean, that's the context, but it's a broader principle. If they tell you this has been sacrificed to idols, come and eat. It says don't eat. But it says even if if you're just sitting with people and they serve you food and they don't, but it's sacrificed to idol, and you have a brother there who is of weaker faith, still don't eat it. If that weaker brother is not there, eat it. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But in verse, that's verse 30. If I partake with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that for which I give thanks? Right? It's like I can eat it knowing it's just meat, and there's no, you can't eat. If you eat meat sacrificed to idols, it doesn't mean there's a demon attached to it and you consume it and that demon comes in you through the meat, right? That's the superstition thing. No, it's just meat that digests and it's then expelled, right? But verse 31, but it does say if you have a brother with you that thinks that way, you are obligated to refrain. It's the tyranny of the weaker brother is what it's called. The tyranny of the weaker brother, that we are, for the sake of our weaker brother, to sacrifice things that we know are fine, right? Don't eat. But if he's not around, like if he's in the next city over, just eat all you want. Because in verse 31, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. All right, final notes. John. Let's see. I just love the question, verse 19. It's in verse 10. How were your eyes open? And then again, when they talk to the blind man's parents, how does he see? So they ask this impossible question to answer. How do you see? How do you come to see? Like it's a miracle, right? And there's no answer to this question that he can give them. And then he says, "You guys are idiots for not believing that God did this." And then they're pissed at him, and then they kick him out of the temple. All right, love you guys. See you tomorrow.